Great, and that report there by David Mbithi, our editor there, now brings us to the conversation we are having now with Dr. David Kabata, an economist. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. We have so much to talk about. For starters, falling back to yesterday with the budget reading by Treasury CS Henry Rotich in Kenya, that is, and you find that Kenya's budget is still at the top, comparing to both, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda combined, the three countries. We're leading with about 2.8 trillion Kenya shillings, which is about 200 billion less compared to the Kenya's budget. I don't know, why is that?
You know, what it means is that our expenditures are high. And I think we need to shift our focus from expenditures to implementation, and from leading a big budget to implementation and the impact that they make to the common mwananchi. Because if you look, there's no need of us leading a very big, presenting a very big budget that has no impact or that is not implemented in the right way. Because some of those things that you see in our budget are things that we can do without. And it's a high time that we look for a tooth comb and try to go through thoroughly the budget and remove anything that is not important from that budget. Because if you look at the expenditure vis-a-vis the revenues, even when the CS was presenting the budget, you could see that he was struggling to look for areas where he could be able to capture some revenue. He went for capital gain, a soft landing. He went for alcohol, something he has always been doing that. He went for gambling. You can see somebody who does not have any other avenue, and we seem not to be able to control the expenditure.
Not to mention that we still have a deficit of 607 billion.
And actually, remember, that is an assumption. If you go back to our budget last year, we had estimated that we were going to correct about 1.6 billion, 1.6 trillion. KRA was going to correct 1.6 trillion. They have only done 1.4 trillion. Right now, we have increased that target for KRA to 1.8 trillion. Yet they have not been able to get to the last year's budget, or whatever the budget that we have right now target. So it tells you that the 6 or 7 billion that we are talking about is just a joke. It is going to go to 800 billion or 700 billion.
Okay, we're now talking East Africa, and what I got from the report that David Mbithi gave us there is that there's still complaints in, say, Tanzania. Women are complaining over, the imported wigs and hair extensions, and just here in Kenya, as you mentioned, there's the increased, excess duty by 15% over alcohol and cigarettes. A packet of cigarettes, for instance, will increase by 8 shillings, that is to 61 shillings per packet. Is it? What's the comparison between Kenya and now Tanzania, which comes in second, Uganda is third, and Rwanda fourth?
Actually, for Kenya to increase taxes on cigarettes, there's no problem. Those are called the sin taxes.
Yes.
And they are usually important because of what we call the social cost, the cost that comes comes due to the consumption of some of those products. So there's no problem with increasing taxes on some of those products, the alcohol and also gaming or the betting. Because the problem, there's no need of you correcting 20 billion and then you use 25 billion in rehabilitating the people who have become the drug addicts. So that is not a problem. I think for Tanzania, it's the same problem that we have here. You have a ballooning expenditure, but you do not know where to get the revenue. So you try to look for areas that you can be able to get the revenue, especially the areas that can give you bigger margin of revenue. And I think that is why you see some of those people complaining. Yes.
Is it an East African problem?
It is an African problem, deficit budgets. Okay, there's no problem of having a deficit budget. The problem is when you don't utilize it in the right way. So what has been happening in Africa, in East Africa and also Africa, is that I think money is readily available from some countries like China, and so they went for some of those debts without thinking about the repercussion. So you find us borrowing money for the current expenditure, and I think that is where we went wrong. as a region. Yes.
I know you've already mentioned that when you're talking about, Kenya's budget, with especially following on yesterday's budget reading by CS Henry Rotich. But what's the way forward, seeing that it's now not only an East African problem, as I said, but an African problem, as you did say? What is the way forward?
I think the way forward is to do away with some of the things that we do not need in that budget. We need to audit the budget, especially for this country. If you look at some of the things that have been budgeted there, we can do without them. Last year, we put about 6 point something billion in irrigation. This year, we have put another 7.9 billion in irrigation. Remember, 3 months ago, when we had a problem with the onset of rain, we panicked as a country because we did not know what to do, meaning that the 6.8 billion was either not absorbed in the ministry, by the ministry, or it was stolen. So I think we need to go through the budget, our budget, and follow the budget making process keenly. Anything that does not make sense in that budget, we do away with it. And with that, we can be able to reduce the expenditures, because we seem to be struggling with the reduction of expenditures. And we need to ask ourselves, where are some of these big expenditures coming from? I'll give you an example. Look at security. 334 billion Kenyan budget. If you look at Tanzania, they have also prioritized security. Now the question is, why are we putting a lot of money in security? It's because we have a youthful region, and youth do not have what? Job opportunities. The average age in East Africa is 18 years. So if these people do not have something to do, they will indulge in crime. And you can see the multiplier effect of not being able to come up with jobs or to create jobs for some of those young people.
Sure. We'll be taking a look at some of the similarities in these four countries, that is Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda. But there are other East African, countries, Burundi, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and so on. But if we could take a look at the other two that we haven't spoken about, Uganda and Rwanda. Uganda coming in third with about 1 trillion, and Rwanda about 316 billion of its budget. Just take us through, just in details for these two countries, Uganda and Rwanda.
I think even Uganda has the same problem as Kenya, because if you look at their budget is about 1.1 trillion, but their debt is about 1.3 trillion. And actually they are also running a deficit budget. So they're still having the same problem that we have here in Kenya. The country that is a bit stable is Rwanda. If you look at Rwanda, their budget is very small, 230 billion Kenyan shillings. They have said that 85% of the budget is going to be funded locally, and 15% through the grants. So we can say at least in the region we have a country that has not gone rogue when it comes to expenditure. Yes.
Let's talk about the similarities now. And I don't know, is there anything positive for starters? Because it looks like we're, complaining and talking about how we have this huge budget and the deficits there. But let's just take a look at some of the similarities.
I think the countries have prioritized education. That is one area that has gotten a lot of funding in Kenya, in Tanzania, and also in Rwanda. We have infrastructure. They have also put a lot of money in infrastructure, the three countries. Then we also have the youth coming in, the issue of the small businesses, the SME. If you look at the Kenyan budget, one of the biggest gainer was the SMEs through the Biashara Fund. We have the pending bills, making sure that some of those people are paid whatever they are owed by the government. If you go to Rwanda, you still get the same thing. They have put more money in one of the banks, I think the development bank, so that they can be able to lend more to the startups, and also they have enhanced their social protection fund. So we have similarities when it comes to some of the areas that we are funding, that are getting the highest funding in the region.
Is there a reason why?
It is because we have had a problem, especially when it comes to infrastructure. We have had a problem in the infrastructure development in the region. If you look at Kenya, it is now that we are having some of these accessibility, especially when it comes to the road network, the railway network, and all those things. And so when some of these countries got easier way of getting funding, especially for infrastructure through Chinese and these other countries. They went for that money, and it is important for us to have a good infrastructure as also so that we can be able to spur growth in this region. And one of the challenges that we have in Africa, you know, I think 2 weeks ago we ratified the free trade agreement in Africa, and one of the biggest challenges in all that free trade agreement taking place is infrastructure. So it is important for these countries to put more money in infrastructure, but we also have to ask ourselves whether we are getting back whatever we invest.
Great. I'm told we need to wind up, but I also need to get your parting shot. I remember yesterday there's a program I was listening to, and they said that at a time there's one finance minister then, you know, when we used to call them finance ministers, who actually came out and admitted that, you know, we're broke, we're not doing good. But in your own words, as you did say, it looks like we're at a time where we just want to sugarcoat things. You know, we're behind the scenes, we're doing really bad, but we don't want to show that to the public, you know, just part of what you also did say there. So let me get your parting shot, and also in regard to that.
I think my parting shot is that we need to shift our focus from big budgets to implementation of the budgets, and also the impact that they have to common mwananchi. If we are able to do that, then we are going to go forward. This business of prioritizing the size of the size of the expenditure is not taking us anywhere. Yes.
Great. Dr. David Kabata there, an economist, of course, joining us for the discussion on the